Good evening, folks. My name is Real Blank Space. This is Tech Talk, Episode 5. I'm being joined by another community member who has been playing for quite some time, and they're here in Discord. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody who's listening, watching on YouTube?
Oh, well, I've played many characters through the years, of course, as everybody else, but most commonly known as Shizdain. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for, man. I gotta work on that. Thank you for coming on the show. I need like a, you know what I need? It's like I need like somebody on a snare drum doing some sort of comedy side bits on the side. But thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate it. Lot of awesome topics to dig into, but I always like to start with kind of the basics. Oh, do you need to take
Of
that?
course, no, no, of course not.
Best
Let me
interview.
start.
I love it. So first of all, I can hear myself echoing in your background.
That shouldn't. I've got my headset on, so.
Okay. Um, you've been playing for a really long time. That's correct.
Yeah, since probably sophomore year of high school, and I'm 34 now, so
It's
you can
a.
count up those years. It's a good at least 15.
I'm gonna say it's a good time. Um, let's start with Shizdain himself. This is your current main right now, right?
Uh, I mean, it's it's kind of hard to say. I don't play him as much as I play some of my other characters, but I'd say he's my most commonly known one,
Oh,
just
okay,
since he has such a colorful past.
gotcha. Um, and we've had all sorts of characters and players here on the show. Um, we have specifically talked about having Shizdain on because of sort of his history in the crime and PvP sort of stuff. So tell us a little bit about his history. Tell us, as much as you want to, public facing information, if you will, but tell us a little bit about this character um, that's known as Shizdain.
All right. Well, I mean, most of this information could be gleaned by just asking, a lot of older characters in games, so I'm not afraid to reveal it here. Um, Started out mostly as a gladiator, joined the Silver Wolves, and really always enjoyed the mechanical aspects behind combat. It's so in depth, and just it's it's so unique. And the fact that you could knock someone out and take their things, and you can create real conflict using it. So in just the type of character that he was, he was generally pretty nice, but also quick fuse, fairly confrontational, was real quick to just, he's a bit of a thug, so if you piss him off, he's just gonna, break your nose. That's generally how it went for a long time. And of course that turns a few heads one way or another. Ended up getting recruited into the BC after a while, and that generated, some further conflict with some particular constables, and eventually, Shizdain had been through 2 or 3 trials, and I think the game, mostly the rules behind PvP changed, and with it came a lot of different dynamics with how players, PvP interactions mostly went.
Okay.
When there was a time that the GMs allowed this open PK system where anybody that was in a criminal organization had to open themselves up to PKs, and anybody that wanted to go against or pretty much perform a PK has to open themselves up to PK as well. Well,
Okay.
this, turned into a pretty much a huge slaughter, and I think the knee-jerk reaction was maybe let's not do that. So this is when trials got introduced, and other than extenuating circumstances, this was pretty much the only way to PK people at the time. So there was a current regime of constables that wanted to see Shizdain dead,
Yeah.
and so planted some magical items in his stuff and brought him to trial. and this created, pretty significant. And he ended up surviving. He didn't get the chopping block, but that's what they were aiming for.
Okay.
So this created a pretty intense rivalry, and Shizdain ended up killing, of course, with the help of his buddies, Aarnes. And I don't know if that's how he's supposed to pronounce his name. I've actually talked to the player a few times. That's how he pronounced it. So if anybody disagrees, they're wrong. Uh, you mentioned it before. I love listening to your tech talks. How everybody has a different way to pronounce
everything.
names. It's always funny to hear it pronounced.
Yeah.
So anyways, Shizdain was enemy of the Republic for a while. It was really obvious he was the one that did it. Aarnes called it out, and he knew. Of course, I was wearing a hood at the time, but he knew exactly who it was. Some brawler comes at you with a bunch of people. Yeah, chances are it's Shizdain.
Right.
So he succeeded in the kill and was hiding for a while, but Shizdain was running around and hiding and trying to prove that Aarnes was, a Ravenite, was a bandit, and, was ultimately a bad person. And I, kept telling everybody, okay, I'll turn myself in once I surface this evidence. And, I found some things, but it was more or less difficult. But that in itself created a lot of very fun conflict between a lot of the current constables. There was a lot of Shizdain hunts and a lot of fun story arcs. And a lot of actual PvP or combat tweaks that ended up coming from some of the ensuing chaos. I feel like I've solely been responsible for at least half the nerfs in the game.
Ooh, that is quite a mantle right there.
I know, yeah. I have a collection. Anyways, Shizdain was eventually caught by a heat-sinking constable.
The best.
Oh yeah, I know. It was the worst. He popped out in the steps. I snuck all the way to the Coliseum, and one of the mechanics behind the game is if you close the window while you're hiding, you remain hidden. But if you type exit, it pops you out of your hiding spot. So I forgot to close the window. I typed exit, and just as I hit the exit, I saw a constable walk in. And of course, if you're sleeping in front of a constable while you're warranted, you wake up in jail. So that's how Shizdain got caught. Sat in jail for a while they decided what to do with him. Ended up going to a trial again, where they decided he was to be executed at Gladium. Got put up against 3 consecutive people, and although people that weren't completely thrilled with the outcome swore up and down that he had 2 of the 3 people rigged. That was definitely not the case. It was just a stroke of luck, but Shizdain ended up coming out on top, of course, since he's still alive. To anybody that's playing the game today probably knows that. And got exiled to the steppes, where he's more or less remained ever since.
All right. Well, we're gonna walk backwards a little bit here for anybody who's new and who goes, wait, what the hell is a BC? So what I'll say is that if you go onto the help files or you start looking through the PDF, there are several. There used to be more active, but several criminal organizations in the game. And the BC is one of them. There's also one that I believe goes by TG, or the Guild. You have BC, the Alati. There's several of these in here. So when you say BC, you're speaking about one of the in-game criminal organizations, correct?
Correct. The Black Centurions. They're located in the northern steppes.
Okay. So for somebody who's, we have a lot of new people that are coming and checking out tech and who are trying to learn more about the game, and they are learning from these. Tell us a little bit about the BC first, and then maybe paint a little paintbrush of the rest of it. So you just said the BC are from the northern steppes. Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, the steppes has a few gangs. The Alati is the south gang, and then there's the Shrikes on the east. The Alati used to be player run. However, I'm not sure exactly why. Maybe just due to inactivity or internal strife or whatever. The Alati is no longer a player-run organization, but if you go to the southern steppes, you'll see gray-clad armsmen. Those would be Umbra Alati soldiers.
Okay.
And on the east, you'll see the black and white. Also, not a player-run organization. The only current player-run gang in the steppes, specifically, is the Black Centurions.
Okay. And so those are kind of centered around the steppes. And if I'm I don't know that much, and that's why I love having people like you on. You're the subject matter experts. Like, so there are a bunch of gangs there, and it's kind of one geographical area, and then there is supposedly one more that's centered around the harbor, correct?
Yeah, that's yeah. The harbor is would be the guild, or
Okay.
commonly known as the rats,
Okay.
the
And,
harbor rats.
and in the game, both whether they're currently player or they're just a part of the game, even if there's nobody actively playing them. Those are really it. You've got your harbor rats, your BC, your Lata. You said the Shrikes, but that's it's really those four kind of moving pieces in the game. Would that be
Yeah,
correct?
well, correct. Yeah, I mean, as far as the lore goes, however, the only two GM recognized criminal run organizations that I'm aware of, at least, are the BC and the Rats,
Gotcha.
and they're both two, but in their core, different types of criminal organization. The Rats are a little bit more secretive. The members tend to, not like to reveal who they are. However, on the flip side of things, like most gangs, the Black Centurions wear their gang colors. They're not ashamed. Well, not I don't want to use the word ashamed. Out of respect of the Rats, they definitely have their place in the world, but they wear their colors just out in the open to kind of signify who they are.
Which, from a player, I think is very interesting, and it adds kind of a not just the lore part, but there's a big distinction, and you feel that organically there is a difference between these player run organizations where one is like running around with their sweatshirt on, like, yo, check this shit out, man. You see these colors? Get the hell out of my way. Whereas the other ones, you don't know. You just happen to be buying some roasted mutton, and then you say the wrong thing to the wrong chick, and someone's smacking you, giving you a little leg strike, dragging you who knows where in the harbor. So I find that that's really cool how they're different. We we've talked a little bit about PvP changes. We won't dig into that too much. Trials have kind of dissipated, and we'll get to that. I wanted to talk about the in-game conflict, and from what you've said, it sounds like you've done quite a lot of that in this game.
Yeah, definitely done quite a bit through Shizdain and through other alts in the past.
Um,
Always love the actual conflict in the game.
Now, we had talked as part of our pre-stream a little bit about criminal conflict, and I had, as part of this new community sort of idea, I was like, what do you think about trying to get together with people to plan certain things out? You know, and your
Mhm.
response was what really struck me, because for me, if I had a conflict character and we talked to each other like, hey, in the next month we're going to try to mess with each other, I would be cool with that. But your response was more about player agency and how it takes away from that. So, can you talk a little bit about how we can maintain the player agency and the scariness of, oh crap, my character did something within the systems we have now? Because back in the
Right.
day, we had open PK. It was very different, dude. You didn't look at people sideways, or you're like, shh, I might end up in a bad spot. Whereas now it's a little different. Can you tell us
Yeah.
how it kind of works now?
Well, if you look at, historically, a lot of the things that we have now are kind of almost knee-jerk reactions to overextending ourselves in the
Okay.
past. So if we take PvP too far, like I used attacking Kella with your bandit as an example, there are some, players in the game that would just rather not, they're like a mother of three and just want to go plant their flowers or whatever and have a good time, and then all of a sudden a bandit jumps out, knocks them out, and takes all their stuff. That's not fun for them, and nobody really wants to see that.
Right.
So I think anybody that plays a criminal character almost has a responsibility to show moderate. Then this is just my perspective and the perspective that I've developed through the years, because everybody knows I've been guilty of overstanding myself as well. But
Uh huh.
as a having played several criminal characters, well, I mean, criminal characters in the past, I think that it's important to show moderation when you attack people, because look at the creation of the steps was more or less the GM's way of saying, of course it's great, here's a new area, but that created this stigma of, okay, now we want all criminal activity to be held within the steps, and then the city is a safe spot, and then the Legio and the TM, of course, was a response from bandit activity, but you almost never see any real PvP inside the city because just you've got heat-seeking constables. The second you drop your plate, constables are jumping out of the crowd. Like, they have gone above and beyond to make sure that criminal activity doesn't blossom within the city. And of course you want people to feel safe, but at the same time I think this is ultimately a response of people going a little bit too far. If you want to make an example, knock someone out, trap them in a room, scare them, but you know maybe take an item from them, give it to their friends, say, hey, I've actually done this quite a few times in the past. I'd take a few of their items, give it to one of their friends, say, hey, let them sweat for a minute, and then give this back to them. Because items, or getting your tongue cut out, all of that stuff is it's some pretty serious ramifications. And if all you're experiencing is just a bit of like adrenaline, it's like, oh man, I'm being beaten up, like how far is this going to go? And then if you just let them off it relatively easy, they don't really want to, they're not going to jump on the forums and be like, oh, this is this is unfair and I can't believe this happened, and it ultimately ruins their experience with the game. Of course, the GMs are, within their infinite wisdom, want to try to make things safe for everybody, or at least make them have fun in the game. And if you're just getting jumped by people right and left and getting all your stuff stolen and getting tied up and thrown in the portal, nobody really wants to experience that on any sort of level. So I think, moving forward, if we wanted to promote any real PvP in the game, outside of, just banditry, of course, because that's the only, people create bandit characters
Right.
for the sole purpose of, I don't care about this character, I'm just going to throw him out in the forest and see how long I can last. And I'm only going to log on him once a week so that nobody recognizes my, the time of day that I log on,
Yep.
or my patterns. I'm going to attack someone over here this time and over there next time, and so no one's going to really get there in time, and then I can keep this character. Now it's just, oh, they've attacked somebody this many times, just pack them up and send them off to the island.
Well, what I really like that you said, and I absolutely agree with, is I myself have learned this lesson. When I was in high school, I made a character and we had quite a lot of fun, conflict, and PvP, but I didn't know where that line was. And when I returned, with my second character, my second main, Sumptu, I started to try and walk that line. And I think as a lot of us more veteran characters are setting this example, you have to learn to walk that line. Like, yes, okay, if statistically and rank wise, I could beat somebody up every day. As a player, I feel like yes, your character could do that, but isn't there more that you could be doing? Isn't there more to the conflict that you could be potentially growing, other than I knocked you out again, I knocked you out again, I knocked you out again? And I think that responsibility is becoming more and more apparent to people. And as an example of that, just recently with the last couple bandits, I posted in the forums. I love the fact that you would hear stories in character, right? Not in the Discord, not in like in character, where people were like, yeah, man, I was walking on the road, they jumped out, they scared the crap out of me, I gave them my money, and then they said, don't look at me and just walk away. And then you heard the stories of other people that were like, nope, I didn't do what they said, they beat the crap out of me. Like, I love that because you're allowing the in character ramifications to happen, right? It's beautiful. I hope we see more of that, because as much as I like the idea that the harbor is kind of mysterious and the steps are scary, don't go there unless you want conflict, I wish that was more, it felt more real and organic. Like, walking around the city should be scary. Like, heat-seeking constables is cool for what they were put in place, designed for, but I like the idea of this is a scary city, you know? It's
But
just
not
not scary
everybody
for the
does.
bandit, you know?
Yeah, well, not everybody wants to feel that way, so it's important, for if you want to do, have a conflict character and attack
Right.
people, that you're not just picking random targets and, oh, this person is, in the tailor shop, they'll be an easy target, and,
Right.
or this person's new to the game, they won't be able to respond to this attack. And, we got to try to, as players, kind of be responsible and try our best to avoid that.
Yeah. I Absolutely agree. Um, oh, that's right. So we were actually talking a little bit about this criminal conflict guidelines, less of the responsibility, right? But um, in your opinion, and I agree with you, there have the classic one is when they made hoods and masks all illegal. A long time ago, they
That
didn't
was a
used to be.
long time ago.
Dude, you
Yeah.
used to buy them in north of northwest of Septimus. You used to go and buy like masks. You know, like you used to be able to buy hoods at the sailcloth shop. I think it was. They changed it because of things that happened in the game. Do you think there is a way that the criminal characters and their players could work on both the responsibility and the way they play their characters so that somebody who's playing a non-com, right, isn't going to get the shit beat out of them or whatever unless they're engaged in a conflict or part of a conflict organically, so that the GMs can reduce or the staff can sort of reduce these systems they put in place to protect people because the community is kind of doing the job itself. Does that make sense? Do you think that that's possible
It
for
does,
people to do?
but the thing is, I mean, like I said, all of the stuff that's put into place is done kind of as a knee-jerk reaction. They have no incentive to remove those right now. Good behavior isn't exactly going to, unless we have like an open dialogue and some sort, with the powers that be, say, hey, let's try to ramp down security in the system or in the city, and see what happens. Give us a chance to, because I've definitely learned from the past, yeah, that's why the steps are there, try to keep all conflict to the steps, but and that's ultimately why the we convince them to put the ludus in, is I'm trying to generate more interest in the steps as a whole. I try to tell the BC members, hey, like, let people wander around, check out the shops. I mean, you even check the help file. That's what we do. This is our character, or in our territory, we get money from these shops. Like, let people wander around. We want people to be able to come to the steps. Yeah, NPCs will come and steal stuff from your hands if you're not careful, or they'll slice your sack. Like, that's literally part of being in the steps. You got to guard your stuff, but at the same time, I'm trying to remove that stigma of, if you come to the steps, you're just going to be jumped, because that was true for a period of time. I mean, I've personally gone to the steps on other characters, and back before I was in the BC, and would I had an archer that was just jumped and looted just for standing in the steps from one of the BCs. So, I mean, I want there to be able to be conflict, but I don't want it to be inevitable. So that way more people will come into the steps, and if we want conflict, it's still possible to have in the steps, because it's become so impossible to have within the city. But if that was still an option, if the need, because right now, especially since there has been so little, I feel like if there was, because I remember when I attacked a few people when Shizdain attacked a few people in the Coliseum, like, that was a really big deal, and I didn't think it would be that big of a deal. It was like, ha ha ha, that's funny, I'm drunk, I'm gonna beat a few people up. And then all of a sudden, that was, oh my god, oh, this happened, oh, it's when I feel like there was a time when, oh yeah, it was just
Oh,
another day in the, another day in the life.
yep.
I guess things have changed so much that anything, any real activity within the city is taken very seriously, and it's that stigma, and from all the knee-jerk reactions put into place. I don't know if there's any real, really a way to revert it back to the way it used to be, where there is, going to be a sense of danger within the city, just because it's the risk versus benefit just isn't there. You might as well just make a bandit and throw him out in the woods.
Right. I did want to share my fun story. I totally was walking around with some too and was trying to decide if I wanted to chop him or not. And a lot of people forgot that he was like one of the first grandmasters of clubs. So I took him to the Coliseum, and I didn't know about the new changes, right? So I didn't know that people could like come up and hit you. So I'm sitting there, I'm just beating up, and some dude comes in, and I got my faceplate down, and this dude tries to hit me with his stave, and dude, it's so funny. Just turns and he's like, "Oh, you're about to have a bad day," and I was so worried because I was like, "Oh man, like I'm gonna get in trouble," and some dude hasn't been in trouble in a long time and whatever, and then I go read that it's okay, and I was like, "Oh, that's cool," but then I started reading more that literally you just say stop, and if they don't stop, then they're in trouble. And I thought, wow, what a cool change, but then to also put that kind of like little divider there. Like,
Yeah.
we're going to give you a place where it could, like, this is the Coliseum. It should be dangerous. It should be scary. Like, it should be lawless. You're literally putting on a faceplate and fighting slaves, you know? Uh, so I understand why things like that are there. They do want that safe place. Do you think that that system works now, where it's like the steps is Wild Wild West, and the harbor still technically is in the city, so you're quote unquote kind of safe. But if you go out towards the road, it's game on. You go in towards the steps, it's game on. Do you like that sort of system, or if you could make any sort of changes, whether it's through code or through community, what would you do?
Well, I would remove heat-sinking constables for one. The fact that that's still a thing is utterly ridiculous. And then, just walking around with your faceplate down, constables are going to pop out, and you know, and then of course if you have a mask or a hood on, they're going to, ring the town bells practically. Um, I would like, I think that there's a lot more. I think one of the main things I would love to see, actually, and this is a little bit of a segue, but
Oh, go for it.
is the ability to think aloud while wearing a hood or faceplate and have it reflect that you're wearing a hood or faceplate. Like that, you can't, you know, there is almost impossible to role play with a hood or faceplate because somebody could just look at you and they know who you are. There's so many defining features that you could, pretty much discern who they are. But if you wanted to communicate with somebody and, you know, be anonymous, it's impossible. You can't, so I think that would be an interesting change to see, is just I put my hood, have it only work for hoods and masks because everybody and their grandmother owns a faceplate these days, and it's meant to be just a combat thing. But if you own a hood or mask, you put it on, and when you think aloud, it's a man in a hood thinks aloud. I think that used to be a thing. Of course the GMs can do it, but I think that would add a certain element to the criminal world that is well needed at this point.
I'm going to throw this is my blank space starts dreaming wildly about tech. I swear I do this about once a tech talk. I'm going to add on top of your cake of awesome and put some frosting on there. I wish it was one step farther. Like, you put on a mask, like maybe you can see gender. So you see like a man or a woman. Dude, if you've got a hood on, I just wish it said a person and that was it. A hooded person. Because to me, right, like, you got a faceplate on, again, same sort of thing. It's a person. And I know that might mess with the way that descriptions and people are, but you shouldn't be able to look at hey, 10 rule points. We did it, Mom. I think that would be more of a step towards making a hood or any sort of face covering sort of have more value, and it allows you to switch them out and or do different things with them. And I love the idea of them being back in ThinkNet. Those changes happened while I was gone, where they changed it where you weren't on who, there was on who, or whatever. You used to be able to think with them. And I think that also adds more risk versus reward. Like, if you've got the cojones to put a hood on, right, and to be thinking, somebody out there is going to be like, well, shit, I wonder where this person is, where they at. And then you know that's out. Like, that's a ballsy move to put a hood on. Maybe you can go with a generic one, but to then be thinking out loud. I got no problem with those sort of changes. I think that they would be interesting. I'm not sure how it would change, like I said, descriptions per se, but and I'm seeing some folks here talking about RV and PvP and stuff like that. But I think stuff like that would be a cool change for conflict going forward. We talked about player intervention. I did want to mention, because you brought it up in our pre-stream, and I found it was interesting. In a lot of these tech talks, I talk with folks, whether it was about patricians or combat characters or about systems in the game. And we have some very, like yourself, I would consider you a player who's played for a long time, who knows about a lot of these systems, who could give a perspective on them. You called it the BRP. Could you
Oh yes.
describe what that is for somebody who might be watching? So we can talk about that a
Yeah.
little bit.
The blue ribbon panel was, it was a collection of players that, were I forget it was if they were voted in or not. Yeah, I think they were voted in by the player base, that trusted that they would have their the player base's best interest in mind, to kind of discuss combat, how to make changes, combat balance changes, because this is every time something new gets introduced, like a new weapon or a new move to a skill set, it affects that skill set, as a whole, and it may, in some a certain combo that might have been an undersight when the move was created, somebody will come and abuse the crap out of it and be like, okay, well, obviously this is not okay, this needs to be toned down a little bit, because we want weapons to be able to all be competitive with one another. I mean, yeah, obviously you don't want everything to be exactly the same. You want, obviously whips are better as well, or designed to be better as like a group combat weapon, and everything has their own time and place, but ultimately everybody wants to feel like, why did I learn this weapon? I mean,
Right.
how many people have you seen unlearn a weapon to pick up staves because they're like, oh, well, this is a face roll weapon, I'll just pick it up and and just beat everybody.
Right.
So like literally half the game has staves right now, and there's no counter to that. You can look through the forums and see, you know, tons and tons of posts about it. Half of them are from me, but still, I feel like it was I think it was run by Japes, and when he came back to the game, I think he just kind of caps out. He does a lot of work, and he came back a few years back, introduced a lot of great new moves, and he went really far into beta testing them. He gave us all the ability. What he did was he gave us all characters, anybody that wanted to beta test these skill sets, because he wanted to find out how viable they are end game. So he gave us characters with all inhuman stats and all 100 ranks across the board,
Right.
and then he put us against one another and said, see what happens. And we compiled the results and said, okay, this weapon's really strong, this weapon's still too weak. And then he made a few changes, but then all of a sudden, poof, he's gone again. So
Right.
some of these skill sets were left half done, some of them weren't touched at all, and some, after the speed nerf, there used to be a bunch of weapons that could have 0-second round times,
Right.
ultimately, just
Yep.
middle of something round times. And skill sets that really relied on those, like knives and brawling and pancreation, weren't touched since, and they in essence just can't keep up anymore. They relied on speed, and now they're as fast as, I can swing a fist as fast as somebody can do a triple attack with their stave, something, and throw out 3 fractures. That's, or
Right.
obviously not with if they had a double mace, but you get what I'm saying. Like, there needs to be some sort of counterbalance system. Well, I would like to see some sort of counterbalance system. Like, I think it would be interesting to see if they brought the BRP back, and because I feel like ultimately the GMs don't want to have the responsibility, because obviously every there's no change that you can make without people complaining about it. And these
Right.
guys, they're there and spending all this time coding and role playing with people and making these items, and then yeah, you get some people, hey, thank you so much, but they're not getting paid, and they also deal with a lot of people just nag 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 nag.
Right.
So that, like I said, there's no change that you can make without somebody being upset about it.
Well,
But
see
if you
that
had
I want to talk about that right there because I, again, dreamer me, I disagree, and I hope if that's how some people feel that we can change that, right? Because if you are trying to balance out something that you enjoy like this, right? When I played, let's say, World of Warcraft, I didn't want rogues to get nerfed or messed with because I played one. But the more I played, the more alts I had, and the more fun that I had overall. Even though it's not a role playing game, I hope this fits. I still wanted it to be balanced, right? I still wanted it to be competitive and fun. And when things are overpowered, it's not fun. If you make everything the same, if everything's bland, I think that in tech, if we start to have less of this crap, I found this overpowered thing, I don't want to show it off because if I do, it'll get nerfed. I wish that there was more of the community. Like, we want changes that make every like this is my skill set and I love it because it has this to it and I give up this to have it, like, and I'm aware of that and I know that, so I've got whips and they may not be the best at this, but they're good at this. And I like brawling because it's good at this, but it's not so great at this. I wish that we could get there more as a community instead of it being like, well, crap, my main character has this and I don't want anything to get changed because it's this. Or, as you've said, and the running joke right now is, well, if you're doing something that's maybe a mid tier or quote unquote low tier, just grab staves. Yep. But with that, I actually came up with a question. Do you feel that every sort of skill set should have their strengths and weakness, or are you one of the, because I've kind of heard both sides, some people would kind of like everything to be kind of homogenized where there's little things but it's not there's not big differences. Where do you sit on that spectrum?
I'd like to walk the line right down the middle, obviously certain strengths and weaknesses, like this set is really strong defensively and
Right.
this strong is really strong the set is really strong offensively. I want all the sets to be unique, but ultimately in the end, I want them all to be competitive with
Right.
one another.
Yep.
Whether it be like a rock paper scissors thing or something, but like it has to be like a breathing, changing system, because any change is obviously going to affect anybody else. So the ability, I think it would be, the ability to create those changes as a player base, like to vote on changes or to create the panel to suggest these changes and have them taken seriously. I would love to see that, because combat is so huge in the game. I mean, ultimately that's what it all comes down to is we were talking about PvP and how you can in essence end somebody if you have a conflict with somebody, and if you have a weapon that mechanically can overpower them just because with half of their ranks, well,
Yep.
Obviously there's something wrong with that.
Yeah. When it comes to the idea of the BRP or
BRP, yeah,
blue ribbon panel, I would love things like that. I know that it's always hard to kind of suggest those things to our staff because it's another thing that they've got to time and sit down, and somebody's got to say, we want to do this. And we talked about this. You have to find people that are willing to be objective and that are willing to take the time to really dig into things. Like, okay, there's definitely a lot of bias from people, right? One of the things we were joking about in the Discord was I always thought that the better your stats were on the courses, the higher your chance to actually go through. And one of the, well, actually two of the kind of number crunching people were like, dude, we don't know that that's real or not. We'd have to collect data on that. And
I'm pretty sure that's actually the case.
I don't have those numbers. It definitely feels like that. I'm like, I just ran a character through and is still running through, and there definitely seems to be a correlation between the stat, the higher it is, and my percentage of chance to make it over that, just based on the completions over time. Again, it's not hard data, but it's as best as I can do. But
if you have a near max character, you throw them in the courses, they're going to make it through it in no time. And then you got a brand new character that you're trying to roll. It takes them forever to get through.
Oh my God, 4-parter right now. God, help me.
It's the worst.
But anyways, what I was really digging into there was the responsibility part. If we're going to get people to get on this panel, or to even make that suggestion, we got to make sure that that's folks that are willing to be like, hey, look, these are the things that could be balanced. These are the things that should be balanced. And to be able to have that conversation with the developers or the staff, where they can explain what their vision is. Because sometimes what we think as players is not always the same as the staff. The staff may have a different vision. Me and you would like it to be kind of middle line, and what they really want is there to be a big difference between all the skill sets where there's bigger holes, and so you never know, and be able to open that dialogue again.
Right.
It's 2018, man. The way I look at this is this game is amazing. It's got one of the best combat systems out there for what it is a round time rank based combat game, and whether it's this BRP, whether it's just opening conversations on Discord and putting them on the forums. I would love to see those changes because I would love everybody to play their character and be like, my skill set, no matter what it is competitive. And there are unique ways to do it, you know? Uh,
Mhm.
maybe somebody wants to do, stave and a shield. I don't know. But maybe they can make it work. We're not going to try to balance off of the one-off crazy things. We're going to try and balance off the base sets themselves. So maybe if anybody's watching, one of you staff members, maybe think about it. We've got
Pretty please.
we've got a couple people who would be interested, but um, we went through most of this. We went through conflict areas, player intervention. We talked about. We didn't. We kind of skipped over a little bit. Um, the BC now is still an active organization, correct?
Yeah, actually, the pretty fairly active. I mean, active is a pretty relative term. The VC still plays, but right now we don't exactly have a lot to do. I mean, yeah, I've been throwing some fight nights out in the steppes, and that's been a lot of fun, And Shizdain's just kind of uh, like an old kindly grandpa now compared to how he used to be. But there's still some stuff in the works. People still show up and show interest in joining, and we pick up a new member every now and again, but just the overall direction is vague as to other than just taking care of our own territory, which we do.
So what I talked about this in my conversation about the patricians and how they had been kind of retired. We've got these two organizations that do criminal stuff that are active right now. What are some things that you could do or you could foresee doing to sort of bring that back to life, even without the staff? And that's what I keep trying to especially community wise. As much as we can do as the community with very minimal staff, I think is best. So you said fight nights. Are there other things that you can do or that you're planning to do with the organization or like the way that the city is right now? I mean, and let me be ridiculous for a second. So like, there's this red hand bandits, whatever. Is the BC going to come march out of the steps and save the city, or are they going to start coming out and murdering people? Like, do you have any sort of plans like that, or is it just kind of a holding pattern, wait and see?
Well, not involving the GMs. I mean, this all kind of revolves around what I talked about earlier in that we can't really do much in the city. I mean, the BC has a fairly decent reputation in that now most people just don't even mess with the BC. Yeah, we could, we've left some examples through the years, but um, there's not a lot of conflict right now. And even if there was, there's too many repercussions to make it worth our while to do anything within the city. Like, yeah, you can hood up and go do whatever. Um, I discourage the guys from banditing because that's not what we do.
Right.
And mostly, like I'd been requesting for years for the Ludus Quintus because the way I looked at it was we'd need to uh, get more people to come into the steps. So
Right.
we need to get them familiar with the steps. We need to make them feel like they can come into the steps without just getting mugged and getting their things taken. And ultimately, with more people coming into the steps, if there's more to do in the steps, then potential conflict could be created. We could create story arcs, like maybe have some. Uh, I think if anything's going to be happening in the steps, it's probably going to be heretical activity,
Yeah.
and create story arcs through that. I just mostly want to start revitalizing the steps because that's going to be crucial because it's a lawless area. Sometimes when I hold fight nights, there'll be a person, maybe two people, and they're wearing hoods because you can.
Right.
Like, that's a great thing about the steps. You look in the crowd, there are no constables. You can walk around freely in a hood, and people will. I mean, if we don't know who you are, then you might lose your hood. But for the most part, you'll be left alone.
Make the steps great again. Build that
That's
wall
it.
over there. Make this. I love it.
No,
I
tear the
love it.
wall down. Tear the wall down. That's just it. It's the steps are too scary. So I'm trying to revitalize the steps a little bit, doing what I can. It was great for I believe it was Pranzer that finally opened up the Ludus Quintus after years of please, 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 please. It's a great place. It's huge actually. It's a fun place to wander around, and it's a great venue for holding fight nights. Of course, Shizdain with his gladiator past loves to is trying to take that angle. But just whatever I can do to create more interest in the steppes, to create story arcs, because if nobody's there and we're not supposed to operate within the city, then that, I mean, other than like fencing items and protecting a ghost town, there's not much else we can do.
Gotcha.
So come visit the steps. It'll be nice, I promise.
Just put everything underneath your sagum before you step on in. Oh.
Exactly. Just don't hold your faceplate in your hands. You'll probably be fine.
And apparently, don't walk in with your hood on until they get to know you. That correction was made here, just so nobody said, I walked into the steps for their fight night, and somebody said, ooh, nice hood, and beat me up. Well, apparently you didn't make friends before you did it. Not my fault. So we went over a little bit of perspective. We talked about the BRP. We talked about Shizdain and what an amazing history. I love the character. Was there anything else that you wanted to add or mention or say before we kind of wrap up this part that goes on YouTube? YouTube. Is there anything that you want to add? Talk about any topics you just wanted to throw out there?
I actually, the only thing that I really wanted to skirt over was just some of the criminals in the past, the criminal characters that kind of inspired me. And
Awesome.
ironically enough, most of them I actually had a huge amount of conflict with. But I mean, ultimately, I ended up respecting the hell out of them, and uh, got a lot of inspiration from them. Like a well played criminal character to me is somebody that's not afraid to, be a jerk in a game where everybody just wants to make friends and be happy. It seems like, it's hard to play a good criminal character. I mean, even Shizdain's nice to people most of the time, but that doesn't mean that he doesn't have another face that nobody really wants to see. But people like Tillin or Talon, I don't know how he says it. He's always been a huge inspiration. Thrine and Hurok, good old Max Powers knows how to play a real good criminal character. There was Milizavini. He was around a long time ago. He played a good one. Riton, he's actually currently in the BC. Love watching his antics. I feel like the game could benefit from some more just thuggish people to
Yep.
kind of create that inherent fear, and with just words and just just walking around and being that person. I saw somebody in my fights yesterday. Actually, it wasn't yesterday, it was Tuesday. I kudos him because he came in, was drunk, and was just I forget how you say his name. He was a newer guy, but just hit on this girl and made a total ass of himself, and then ended up fighting her. Oh, it was great. It was great. I love seeing just conflict verbally. Really hype up your match before the match, and it was just good to see. So I hope that more surfaced through the years.
Well, I can definitely appreciate a well played bandit, criminal. Conflict in this game, to me, is what drives character growth. There are some characters who have very kind of the same story. They just kind of did this. And I feel like conflict adds these bumps and hills and valleys to the story. Some of the best, and I know this is the same for you. I'm going to automatically assume this for you. The most fun we've had in this game was through some sort of ridiculous conflict. Is it true?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I've had tons and tons of fun, through story arcs that the GMs have made, but ultimately, unless you're on chopping block, that's going to be it. You might get knocked out.
Right.
Player might come and steal a couple of your stuff, but player versus player, I mean, most of the fascinating, unique stories that you'll hear in the game was generated by players, and I think ultimately to kind of lessen the haste in which we push for a PK, kind of try to stretch it out. Don't just jump straight to, oh, I don't like this guy, I want to kill him. Stretch it out a little bit, create conflict, have a good rivalry, because that's what keeps you coming back. Well, kept me coming back for a long time, having a good rivalry, knowing that, you can't think out your location, otherwise you might get jumped, or,
Yep.
you know, stuff like that. I feel like that really adds a lot of depth to the game, but only if that's what drives you, right? So create conflict. Don't rush too fast. Don't cut tongues if you don't have to. But at the same time, you know, show a little bit of restraint on people that may not operate off of the same things that you do. May
Right.
not want to be involved in that.
What he's really saying and dancing around is don't beat up the locksmith who's never been to the steps, who's never been anywhere, who just happens to walk by, and you'd be like, come here, jackass, and yeah, so maybe it's organic to the game, but maybe just scare the crap out of him, tell him to drop his money. If he doesn't drop it,
Well,
be like, I'll
it all
find you
depends.
next time.
If they're mouthing off, yeah, you do what you got to
Oh
do,
yeah.
But if they're just wandering through saying, hey, where's the bank? Show them.
I'll show you where it is. It's here. Give me your money.
It's on the face of my club.
I love it.
You looked at me without nodding. Knock aside.
Listen, if we're talking 1997, that was, and we talked about it, and I didn't want to get into it too much, but it looks like back in the day, somebody looked at you wrong, somebody talked to the girl you liked, you thought somebody was cybering with, dude, it was game, and it was
Chaos.
Oh,
It was chaos. It was wonderful chaos.
hey man, do you want to go down to the sewers? Nope, I do not.
Nope.
Hey man, why don't you follow me real quick? Nope.
No way.
Hey, do you want to come? I got this item in my remote. If I had $1 for every time that worked on somebody, hey man, I'm gonna show you something in my room real quick. Click. Yeah. You might as well just go passive now because this is gonna go poorly. Like it used to be. It used to be the Wild West, and now it's kind of the other way. I'm looking forward to. And again, I got to mention, I don't have a conflict character at all. I have a Legio character, so that conflict's kind of organic to that role, but I don't have a dude who's, look at me sideways and I might smack you upside the head. There's kind of rules to the way my conflict character is. I would love to see the criminal organizations able to engage in conflict that doesn't always, all right, cut tongue, PK, more of the, I knocked him out. I told him I'm coming back if he doesn't give me 10 talents by next week. I took his item and I gave it to my girlfriend to wear. And, or we send it to a smith and inside it's etched with a middle finger. Whatever it may be, I would love to see more of that. That's the stuff I would do, man. Y'all wait. My conflict character's coming. That's all I'm going to say. It's coming. Y'all wait.
You want to see more of that, right? Which character did you say you play?
I don't think I mentioned. I don't think I mentioned him. But I would love to see more of that happening in the game. And just because I touched on that, it is something that I'm working on in the Discord. We're trying to come up with more, whether it's role play expenditures that come before the tongue cut or the PK. And if you're one of the older school players or you're watching and you're interested, we are kind of having those discussions in Discord, in the Tech Discord, so that we can maybe put a little request to the GMs. And because right now it's pretty much like it's organic, it's between you, right? There's no system really to track it. So we're working on something like that. I think it used to be like at conflict or something. Now I guess you can do it like an at history, but you write up the things that have happened and then say you grab them and then you can scar their hand. Or maybe you give them an injection that makes them not be able to think for an in-game month, right? And it becomes a role play way of, or maybe you beat them in the head so much they can't think for a month. So we can add more role play.
That would be huge. I think that's something that I think should be added to the game, is removing somebody's ability to think. I think that would be the big seller. People would pay 2,000 role points for the ability to do that.
Just and adding some more of those, which it's very easy to say to the staff, hey, we came up with these cool ideas. And if you want to be a part of the conversation, join the Discord. I've been kind of collecting things as we've discussed all over the place. so that maybe you can scar somebody. You have to be holding a torch, and you burn their arm, and it cost you 500 whatever's 500 role points, but now they have a scar on their arm that does not go away. Or maybe you brand them. Yeah, they used to have the FUR brand. I would love to see more of those, because it
I
adds.
actually just talked to a constable character. They still have the NPC, but he's been broken or just not working, and nobody's responding on the ability to reuse that NPC. Otherwise, they still would be using him.
Right.
I think the GMs took it away.
We are, as a community, I'm giving everybody a nice warm hug. I feel like we're coming up with these cool ideas and trying to make it easy to offer them to the staff, to be like, hey, could you code this for us? These are some cool things that we could do for conflict we'd like to spend role points on, that gives us our conflict more, more things to buy, so that it's not just like, oh, I knocked him out once, he pissed me off, I cut off their tongue. It's like, they knocked me out, and so I beat them on the head for 500 role points, and they couldn't think in character for a week or for a month. Or, I've got a bunch of crazy ones, they'll never get approved. Like, you cut off a finger, so they need to learn 10 more ranks of recovery. I know it'll never happen, but, we're still writing those things up. I think that if we can agree on them as a community and then ask for them, all we got to do is be like, hey, Tail, hey, Skolv, one of you guys, whoever's not busy today doing requests or coding, who knows what, shopkeepers, could you just throw these together for us? We would love it. We'll send you some beer for Christmas. Love you, bye. So, but
Maybe that would be interesting to have some sort of, like if we look at tech as if it was politics, have a donation box for the GMs. So say, hey, we appreciate your time. So I feel like they should get paid. We pay a ridiculous amount per month. I feel like I pay more for tech than I do, any other game that I play. I
yup.
feel like the staff should be compensated. It's silly to me that they're not.
We love you, staff, for the things that you do. And as you can tell, it seems like Shizdain here too. There are plenty of us out here who are trying to make community suggestions that are discussed, well thought out, and handed to you. So all you got to do is take an afternoon and code it up, and everybody wins. And I'm hoping we can continue these, whether it's the Tech Talks or talking in a Discord, to improve the game together. But with that being said, for YouTube, is there anything else that you wanted to add before we shift from here and just have the hangout time?
No, sir. My beer is empty and I'm ready for another.
Perfect. With that being said, this was Tech Talk, episode 5 with Shizdain. I want to thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for your character history, your perspective, your candor on changes that could happen to the game versus how you kind of make things work now. Good luck with the Ludus. Good luck with your conflict being kind of built in the game. I look forward to my character potentially running into you and having some sort of fun there in the future. And thank you for watching this on YouTube. We will be right back for those of you watching on Twitch, and we're just going to hang out and BS until Shiz has got to go. So we will be right back.